The day I stepped into the Mara mansion, I felt like I'd walked straight into a dream. A flawless marble driveway curved toward a towering estate where every corner whispered wealth. Crystal chandeliers hanging delicately from the high ceilings, imported Persian rugs soft underfoot, and oil paintings that stared at me like they held untold secrets. "Welcome to your new home, Anya," said Madhavi Mehra, my new mother, her voice velvet smooth and eyes glinting with warmth. I wasn't sure I believed. Next to her stood Tara, their biological daughter. About my age, with flawless posture and unreadable eyes. She didn't smile when I arrived. She only said, not unkindly, "Your room's upstairs, second floor." Orphanage life hadn't prepared me for luxury like this. After my mother died of illness 2 years ago, I'd been passed between relatives until no one wanted me. The Metras, though, they had chosen me. My new room looked like something out of a magazine: soft lavender walls, a window seat with a view of the entire city, and bookshelves perfectly arranged in alphabetical order. It was impossible to believe this was all for me. At dinner, we sat in silence around a large glass table. Madhavi served everyone with precision. Rajiv Mehra, my new father, barely looked up from his newspaper. He radiated silence like a force field. Tara sat across from me, motionless, her fork touching her untouched food, but her eyes were fixed on me, not with curiosity, but calculation. That night, as I lay in bed, trying to sleep, I heard something, a soft clicking sound, like a door creaking shut slowly. I got up quietly and walked into the dimly lit hallway. The source was a room at the far end of the corridor, the same one Tara had gestured vaguely toward when I arrived, though she hadn't said its name. There was faint light glowing under the door. I took a step toward it. "You shouldn't go there." The voice was behind me, cold, flat, almost mechanical. It was Tara. "Why not?" I whispered. "That room's off limits. Mom doesn't like anyone near it." "What's inside?" She looked at me for a long time. Then, "You'll find out soon enough, or maybe not at all." I nodded, pretending to understand. But something inside me twitched. This family was not what it seemed. And maybe, just maybe, neither was I. It started with a whisper in the walls. I wasn't even sure if it was real the first time I heard it. Just the faintest shuffle, like a chair being moved across a wooden floor, or someone breathing too close to a door. Every night, around 2 a.m., the hallway outside my room would go inexplicably cold, and the same soft sound would return. Always from the same corner of the house. That corner, that locked room Tara warned me about. So one night, I waited. I stayed awake, heartbeat slow but steady beneath my sheets, eyes fixed on the clock beside my bed. 2:01 a.m., and there it was, the soft squeak of metal, the low hum of movement. Quietly, I slipped out of bed and crept across the hallway. The door to the forbidden room, usually shut tight, was now slightly ajar. A pale blue light flickered from within. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. My breath caught in my throat. Then curiosity won. I pushed the door open. The room was cold, smaller than I expected. Bare walls where dozens of mirrors covered every inch of space. Floor to ceiling, cracked and spotless. Some were ancient, warped in the glass. Others clean and modern. Together, they reflected me from every direction. Not just dozens of copies, but fragments. A shattered, kaleidoscopic version of myself. At the center stood a single chair. It was metal, bolted into the floor, with leather straps drooping from the arms. Like someone had been tied down there, watched from all sides. A chill ran through me. Then the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around. Tara stood in the doorway, her face expressionless, only her eyes alive, bright with something between fury and fear. "I told you not to come here," she said softly. "What is this place?" I asked. Her eyes darted across the room. "They call it the mirror room. It's not for us. You've been here." Tara blinked once, then said, This is where she trains the ones she picks. Trains them? For what? Her lips tightened. It doesn't matter. None of them last long. You'll figure it out eventually. Why me? I whispered, suddenly cold, despite the room's warmth. Why did she adopt me? She stared at me for a moment, then said something I wasn't ready to hear. Because I failed. Before I could respond, she turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open this time. I stared back at myself, 30 fractured versions of my own eyes flickering in the mirrors, and I understood something terrifying. This room wasn't here to reflect who I was. It was here to change me into someone else. At first, the changes were small. My school schedule shifted. I was pulled out of regular classes and placed into private tutoring sessions at home. Madhavi insisted it was for enrichment, but the topics were unusual. Logic puzzles far beyond my grade level, chess positions with no obvious answers, emotional scenario role plays that made me feel like I was being tested more than taught. You have potential, the private tutor, Mr. Nath, would say. But potential must be shaped. He never called me by name, always student or candidate. That bothered me more than it should have. I felt like an object, a project. Tara, meanwhile, watched in silence. She wasn't part of these sessions anymore. Instead, she lurked in corners, like a ghost haunting a past she couldn't forget. Sometimes I caught her staring at me from the hallway mirrors, as if trying to see through me, to know how far I had come in replacing her, because that's what it felt like they were making me into what she once was or failed to be. Then came the combat training, self-defense, Madhavi called it, taught by a cold-eyed instructor who never smiled, who held my wrists too tight during practice. You're not learning to fight, he said on the first day. You're learning to win. Against whom? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I was too afraid of the answer. One afternoon, during a session on body language reading, I paused. The instructor had shown me a video, a man and a woman arguing at a table. He asked me what I saw. Anger, I said. Whose? Both. Wrong. Only the woman is angry, he said coldly. The man is pretending. Watch again. Observe the fingers, the blink rate. I watched, and this time I saw. The subtle twitch in the man's brow, the faked tension, the way his hand relaxed just before slamming the table. It was a performance. My skin crawled. What are you teaching me? I whispered. He said nothing. Later that night, I found a stack of neatly bound papers in my drawer, a printed evaluation form. Subject, Anya Mehra. Emotional response adaptability, 8 out of 10. Cognitive strategy comprehension, 9 out of 10. Physical potential, 7.5 out of 10. Recommendation, continue accelerated conditioning. I hadn't written this. I hadn't even known I was being evaluated. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening, waiting for the whispers in the walls to return. Madhavi had upgraded my life, yes. But she wasn't raising a daughter. She was constructing something, building, and I was the material. The whispers came back the night after I found the evaluation file, only this time they were clearer. Murmurs, like two people arguing in the room next to mine. Sharp, urgent words I couldn't quite make out. I got up slowly, pressing my ear to the wall. Nothing. Then, a soft thud, followed by the scraping of wood on wood. A shifting floorboard? I crept out of my room barefoot, every step carefully placed to avoid alerting the creaky stair. The corridor at the far end, past the library, had long been avoided after my first encounter with the mirror room. But tonight, it called to me like a magnet pulling steel. This time, I wasn't looking for the mirrors. I followed the sound. Behind a vintage bookcase near the hallway's darkest corner, I found a thin, vertical line carved into the wall. So faint, you wouldn't see it unless you knew where to look. I ran my fingers along the edge. Click! The bookcase shifted with a groan. Behind it was a narrow passage, dusty, ancient, cold. I ducked inside. What I found wasn't what I was looking for. It was worse. The passage led to a small, forgotten storage room, its floor littered with old boxes, scrap furniture, and thick layers of time. But there, stuffed between books on a splintered wooden shelf, was something that didn't belong: a notebook. Faded leather cover, torn edges. A name etched in the corner with pen marks half erased by age: Kavya. Not Anya, not Tara. Someone else had once lived here. With shaking hands, I flipped through it. First entry, arts. They told me I was special, unique, chosen, but special people don't get locked in mirror rooms until they break. Second entry, lessons are intensifying. I don't know what they want me to become, only that I don't want to be it anymore. 10th entry, Tara watched me yesterday, jealous. Like she knew I was replacing her. Like the house only has room for one weapon at a time. I stopped reading there. My fingers trembled. The entries continued. Pages torn, ink smudged from what looked like hurried, desperate writing. The last page was dated almost a year ago. After that, nothing. No completion, no goodbye, no Kavya. Someone else had come before me. She had been prepped, trained, twisted, and then erased. My chest was tight as I put the notebook in my coat pocket and backed out of the dark room. My thoughts screamed in silence. Did Tara know? Did Madhavi? Did Rajiv? Or were they all part of something even darker? That night at dinner, I searched every face at the table. Tara's eyes met mine, unreadable, as always, but something had changed. She knew I had found something. Madhavi served soup like nothing was wrong. Rajiv never spoke, but I had a name now. A missing girl who had been chosen before. And deep inside me, panic and purpose collided. I was next in line for whatever this was. But not anymore. I wouldn't disappear. We avoided each other for 2 days. Or rather, I avoided her. But I could feel Tara circling like a predator waiting for the right moment. She wasn't angry. Tara never reacted the way a normal girl would. Her silence was more dangerous than screams. But I couldn't wait anymore. I had Tavia's journal hidden inside the lining of my mattress. I'd read it 3 times since finding it. Each word was like a crack forming in the illusion I had once called a home. So on the 3rd night, under the dim yellow lights of the hallway, I stood outside Tara's door. I knocked. No answer. I opened a door anyway. She sat cross-legged on the carpet beside her bed, headphones in, eyes closed, back straight, like she was meditating, waiting. The moment the door creaked, she spoke without opening her eyes. "You found her, didn't you?" I nodded before I realized she couldn't see me. "Kavya," I said. Her eyes opened. There was no surprise. No attempt to deny it. Just cold, quiet confirmation. She lasted 22 months. They said that was average. "She's gone," I whispered. No explanation. No goodbye. "And you're acting like it was expected." "Because it was," she said, standing up slowly. "You're not the first, Anya. You probably won't be the last." "Why would your mother do this?" I asked. "Why bring children here just to use them?" Tara's glare sharpened. "She's not just my mother, she's a strategist. And you're not just a girl, you're a weapon. At least, that's what she thinks." My mouth dried. "And what do you think I am?" She looked at me, really looked, as if trying to answer that for herself. "I think you don't know yet, and they've counted on that." A beat of silence passed. "Anya," she said, voice dipping into something almost regretful, "you don't know what they're capable of, what they've already done." "You failed," I said carefully, "and they brought me here to replace you." "I didn't fail," she snapped, and for once she sounded human. "I refused." I blinked. Refused what? To hurt someone who didn't deserve it. The words hung between us, still vibrating in the air. Then she said something that made my bones ice cold. "Your real parents, Anya. Do you even know how they died?" My stomach twisted. "They said illness, accidents. Did you ever see the reports?" "No." Exactly." She turned away. "You're too deep in now," she said over her shoulder. "Maybe one day you'll have the strength to walk away. But by then, you'll be too useful. And that's when you'll become dangerous. To them or for them. Doesn't matter. I left her room numb. That night, I stared at the ceiling again, thoughts racing. Not about Tara, not even about Kavya, but about myself. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. A girl with a story? Or a weapon waiting to be activated? Madhavi Mehra had the kind of smile that made people believe every lie she told. At school functions, she spoke fluent kindness. At charity galas, she posed like the picture of compassion. At home, she prepared fruit bowls after my training sessions, always slicing apples into perfect hearts. But her eyes never smiled the way her lips did. And now, I knew why. Tara's words had cracked something open in my mind. I stopped looking at this house as a home and started studying it like a crime scene, tracking normal routines for signs of something hidden underneath. I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights after our talk, I followed Madhavi. She moved softly through the house, dressed in a long robe, her heels silent against the marble. I didn't know where she was going, only that she almost always went alone when no one was watching. But I was watching now, down the same corridor, hidden behind the bookcase. Past the room where I found Kavya's journal was another door. This time, steel, silent, sealed with a keypad. Madhavi entered the code like she'd done it 1,000 times. The door slid open, rabbit quiet. I waited 2 minutes and followed. Inside was something between a study and an operations center. 2 walls of file cabinets, a long table lit from beneath. Boxes stacked and labeled, not with names, but with code names. I wasn't the only one designated like an object. One file rested on the desk, open and half-read. I couldn't help myself. I moved closer. Case designation ASX03 RE. Transaction with subject family. Objective: adoption of minor, female from filed candidate list. Targeted emotional conditioning. Weaponized loyalty. Deploy in Phase 3. Controlled closure protocol. My fingers gripped the edges of the file. Loyalty? Weaponize? I turned the page. A photograph slipped out. My parents, my real ones, standing in front of an NGO building, smiling. They weren't just random victims, as I'd been told. They were whistleblowers, investigators, journalists, the kind of people who exposed families like the Mehras. Beneath the photo, one line was underlined in red. Eliminated via fabricated medical narrative. No loose ends remain. Offspring retained as asset. That word stuck in my brain like venom. Asset. Behind me, the door clicked open. I turned. Madhavi stood there, a tray in her hands, carrying tea like this was just another Wednesday night. "You've grown curious," she said calmly. I couldn't speak. She placed the tray on the file cabinet, not bothering to look at what I'd read. "They were good people, your parents," she said quietly. "Idealistic, brave, foolish. You killed them," I whispered. She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't kill anyone, dear. I made the decision necessary at the time." "For what? Vengeance? For justice?" She corrected sharply. "The world robbed me of my blood. I'm only returning the favor, systematically." I couldn't understand what she meant yet, but I knew this. This woman hadn't adopted me out of love. She had harvested me, trained me, shaped me. Not into a daughter, into a tool, and I was done being kept in the dark. After that night in the hidden room, nothing felt real anymore. Each time Madhavi smiled at me across the breakfast table, I saw razor blades behind her teeth. Every soft knock on my bedroom door tightened a knot of dread in my stomach. The mansion wasn't a home. It was a trap, disguised with chandeliers and warm towels. And worst of all, I was starting to play my part too well. I could lie without blinking. I was learning to anticipate movements, detect lies in tone and stance. The lessons that once confused me were now as easy as breathing. Was I becoming the thing they built? The question haunted me, but there was no time to unravel it, because if I let emotions slow me down, I would become just like Kavya, erased. Tara was distant since our last talk. Not cold, just absent. She avoided eye contact, slipping ghost-like between rooms, always within reach, but never within grasp. For a moment, I thought she might be drifting away from her guilt, until she slipped a folded note under my door. Come to the basement. Midnight. Come alone. I didn't know whether to trust her, but I didn't have anyone else. That night at exactly 11:57 p.m., I slipped out of my room. I moved through corridors like someone who'd lived there forever. I know which floor tiles creaked, which cameras blinked suspiciously, which corners to duck behind. What terrified me most was how effortless it had become. In the basement, she was waiting. Tara stood near the old furnace, partially lit by a single bulb swaying overhead. Her expression wasn't just serious, it was scared. I overheard a conversation, she said, words sharp and low, between my mother and someone on the phone. Who? I don't know. An official. Government? Corporate? They only used code names. What were they talking about? You. The air around me went still. She said you're almost ready, that your performance evaluations have passed the threshold. They'll begin phase 3 soon. Which means, her voice shook. Target selection, deployment. You're no longer a subject. They're preparing you to act. I think they're planning your first assignment. My mouth went dry. There was no code of silence left between us now. I looked her dead in the eye. Is it you? She flinched. That's what I kept wondering, Tara whispered. Am I your final test? I didn't answer, because I couldn't be sure. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, one of many scattered around the house. I used to search that face for signs of who I was. Now I searched it to see what I'd become. I wasn't afraid of Madhavi anymore. I was afraid of how much of her might be inside me already. Because what if becoming the weapon was easier than resisting it? It started with a whisper from Tara. There's one more room, she said, her voice like something spoken through a cracked mirror. The one even I'm not allowed in. A room even she keeps secret? I asked. Tara nodded. If Kavya's journal was the past, this room is the blueprint for the future. 2 nights later, I found it, hidden behind the wine cellar, past a false panel in the floor. A staircase spiraled downward into earth. No marble this time, no polished light or silk curtains, just stone and iron. At the bottom, a reinforced steel door with biometric access, not a keypad, a scanner. I didn't have time to guess. I pulled a single strand of hair from Madhavi's brush in the upstairs bathroom earlier that day. I'd hidden it in my sock. By pure chance or divine betrayal, the scanner flashed green. The door hissed open. Inside was silence. Rows of metal drawers, indexed coldly. A shallow glow spread across blueprints, photographs, and files. So many files. And there, in a drawer labeled C23 Anya, my life waited. Waiting. And inside a drawer labeled C23 Anya. A long bloodline, John biological. DNA, Mother Ria Narayan. Father Anya. Background, investigator journalist. Deceased. Father. Mother Ria Narayan. Investigator journalist. Deceased. Father. Dr. Vikram Narayan, cyber ethics researcher. Deceased. Status. Terminated under controlled casualty operation Riverlight. My jaw clenched. They didn't die of illness. They were eliminated because they exposed something. Another file. Operation Riverlight detailed a vast corruption chain, embezzlement, trafficking, even medical experimentation, linked to shell companies owned by the Mera Group. My parents had been tracking it for 2 years. They got close. Too close. So Madhavi didn't just orphan me. She harvested me. Replanted me in the home of the enemy. As an act of punishment? No. As vengeance. But not my vengeance. Hers. I turned to another set of files titled S21 Tara and S22 Kavya. Timelines, test results, behavioral evaluations, psychological thresholds. I wasn't a girl to them. I was a phase number. And I was the only one left standing. One final document greeted me at the center table, a briefing prepared 3 weeks ago. Subject S23 report. Performance exceeding projected metrics. Emotional override decreasing. Identity transfer nearing completion. Phase 3, execution pending. At the bottom, a name, a target. I looked, and the world disappeared under my feet. Back in my room, I barely remembered walking. No sound, no words. I sat staring at nothing. Because the name on that file, the one I was being trained to destroy, wasn't a politician, not a criminal. It was Tara. Not for rebellion, not for judgment, but for replacement. One chosen daughter to erase the weaker. Like Kavya before me, like me next. Unless I broke them first, I didn't sleep. How could I? After reading that file, after seeing Tara's name listed under scheduled termination, like she wasn't even a person. Like she was a flaw in the machine. A failure to be wiped from the blueprint. Just like Kavya was, and just like I would be. The moment I stopped being useful, the mansion felt smaller now, like the walls had shifted, inching closer. The chandeliers no longer sparkled. They dangled like silent threats. Every polished surface reflected some version of me, fractured, sharpened, breaking. I had been trained to obey, to mimic, to adapt. But they never imagined I'd learn how to think. I found Madhavi in her study the next morning. She was arranging fresh flowers on the mantel, her expression as pristine and smug as ever. "I know," I said. She didn't move. "Know what, darling?" "The files, Riverlight, who I am, who you are." A pause. Then, without turning, she asked, "And what do you plan to do with that knowledge?" "Free myself," I said. "And Tara." Now she turned, slowly, calmly, as if I'd just threatened her with a wooden spoon. "Tara was never meant to last," Madhavi said. "Neither were you, unless you served your function." "I'm not your function. You're whatever I made you to be." Her voice sharpened. "Do you think love fed you, educated you, trained you? That wasn't kindness, dear. That was investment. And now I expect returns." Her words burned, but they didn't control me anymore. "You took everything from me," I whispered. "I gave you purpose. You gave me chains," I said. Her mask didn't slip. It shattered. Madhavi strode forward, eyes filled with controlled fury. "You are standing in power because of me. Without me, you are nothing but a scared little orphan." "No," I said quietly. "Without you, I might have been happy." She raised her hand, a signal. 2 guards stepped out from the hallway shadows. She had planned this. "You shouldn't have gone snooping, Anya." But I wasn't the same girl who arrived in this house needing to be rescued. I was the girl they trained to fight. Moving on instinct, I swept a vase from her table into the nearest guard's face. Glass shattered. He stumbled, yelling. I lunged toward the second with a tic driven by every locked door training session they ever gave me. I was their student. I was their mistake. 10 minutes later, I ran. Out the back garden, through the hidden trail Tara once showed me. The journal of Kavya zipped in my coat, the full files tucked beneath my arm. Tara was already waiting near the tree line. "You did it?" she asked. I nodded, breathless. "I think she tried to make me a weapon." "And?" Tara asked. I stared through the trees, where the mansion still loomed behind us, quiet, watching. "I think she succeeded," I said. "But not how she wanted." I thought I would feel free after escaping the Mera estate. But freedom doesn't come instantly. It creeps in, like light through curtains after a long night locked in unfamiliar dark. For 3 weeks, Tara and I remained hidden, moving between safe houses. With Kavya's journal, Riverlight documents, and encrypted files from Madhavi's secret room, we held more than just evidence. We held power, the kind that could unravel entire empires. But that power came with a decision. We could expose them publicly, destroy the Mera legacy, let truth do the bleeding, or I could return and hold the knife myself. Tara was clear. If you go back, it's on your terms, not hers. Just don't become her. That haunted me more than any plan of escape. Because when you are trained to be someone's weapon, It's hard to tell whether the hand that swings is yours. I returned to the Mera estate one final time, not sneaking, not hiding, at the front gate, in daylight. They didn't expect that. Madhavi met me in her private chamber, dressed in the same flawless white sari she wore the day I arrived. Unwounded, unshakable, still smiling. "You came home," she purred. "How wise." "I didn't come back," I said softly. "I came to end this." She tried to smirk, but her eyes faltered. Empty threats from an emotional girl. I handed her a small drive. That contains everything. Riverlight, the deaths of my parents, the clandestine adoption ledger, Kavya's testimony. It's backed up on 6 servers. One press of a button, and the world knows. Her hand twitched. "You wouldn't," she said. But this time, it wasn't certainty. It was hope disguised as arrogance. "I won't," I replied. "If you sign one thing." I placed a legal document in front of her. Resignation from every Mehra enterprise. A full confession to regulatory authorities. A non-disclosure clause about my identity, Tara and Kavya. And a stipulation declaring Mehra Trust must fund educational institutions for orphan girls under independent supervision for the next 30 years. When she looked up from it, something in her face cracked. "You came to destroy me with kindness," she spat. "No," I said. "I came to destroy what you wanted me to become." She signed. Not because she wanted to, but because for the first time in her life, she had no control left. 2 years later, the Mehra Empire was silent. Not dead, but stunned. Wrapped in lawsuits and reform orders. Media headlines sniffed close to the scandal, but they never found me. I made sure of that. Tara went abroad, rebuilt her life in her own name. We don't talk much. We don't need to. As for me, I didn't vanish. I built something. A foundation. A real one. For girls like me. For girls like Kavya. No mirrors, no masks. Just light. And sometimes I still think about who I was meant to be. A weapon. A tool of revenge. But that was someone else's story. I rewrote mine. Not out of forgiveness. Not out of love. But because choice is the only revenge that truly ends cycles. I wasn't adopted for revenge anymore. I survived for freedom.